Okay, hello everyone. I'm just waiting for Jonathan to join me. I think he's possibly had the wrong link, and well, he's actually sharing from this link actually, so maybe he's just entered the wrong room. So just waiting for Jonathan to catch up, and we'll see what happens. All right, but today when he joins us, we will be talking about coping with. Here he is. Hey, big man.
Hello. I don't know what audience I'm streaming to on the other thing.
Okay. Well, I don't know. It's streaming from here too, so you should be right. It should be gold. Yeah. So today we are talking about coping with or managing conditions like ADHD, like myself, and Jonathan's gone again, and autism. And we can talk about some of the causes, some of the growing up with the sugar diet and things like that, and some of the problems that when you're growing up, these development sort of problems that we have that cause these conditions. Oh, there he is, on the big screen. But we'll also talk about today things that we use ourselves to manage these conditions and to try and sort of keep on top of these sort of things, because they do present a lot of challenges. I can't speak for Jonathan, of course, but like for me, it's an ongoing sort of thing that I need to stay on top of, because it's very, very easy when you have ADHD to just get sidetracked, and you tend to lose everything, So let's start with you, Jonathan. I mean, like, you've been dealing with autism for your whole life, obviously, but what are some of the things that you have to deal with? We'll start with the problems and what do you think sort of led to that, and then we'll work out. Then we'll talk about some of the habits that we've cultivated to try and stay on top of it. All right?
Yeah, sure. So that's a good question to pose. Also, thanks as well for setting this up, because these sort of talks are important. These sort of videos, guys, don't get a lot of views. So if you can like, comment, subscribe, and all that sort of stuff, it helps people out a lot. Share it if you can. If you know someone with autism out there that might be just following the standard Western diet, ketogenic diet, get more towards carnivore if you can. Just because I do experience a benefit from it, and I know DC experienced benefit with ADHD as well. So I'm going to take you back a little bit towards my childhood, because I think that's where it's important to start. I was diagnosed quite late with autism, so I must have been about 20. I can't remember exactly, maybe 22 years old, 21, something like that. And what it was is, I always noticed when I was a child, I sort of didn't quite fit in right. Is in things were always a bit weird. Like, I'd sit in situations in school, or there'd be certain tasks we'd have to do, and I'd really struggle with them. And then other tasks I'd actually find really easy. I'll be sort of like sat there at the end of the lesson thinking, well, that was a piece of pie sort of thing. That was easy to sort of get on with. Then my issues were mostly with the social side of things. So initially, when I was younger, I couldn't talk. I was pretty much mute until the age of maybe 3, I'd have to estimate. So no real sound or anything. I also had speech and language therapy, so that's quite common. I kind of feel like that's because of sensory overload when you're that young, that you're not in an environment that's conducive for people with autism. When you're that young, you have no base. You have no sort of you're still human, obviously, but you don't have a base of like, oh, these are my parents, these are my brothers, brother, right. This is my family. So you feel very isolated, and you don't really know who you are. There's just, I see a situation, there's my food, I eat it, okay, I go to bed at night, and I get up in the morning. I struggle to sort of do things which require a lot of coordination as well. So like putting on socks and things, I didn't like labels too much. Certain sensory things I found really disturbing. And all these sort of things started to mount up as I got older and older. And I never really realised until it got to breaking point when I was in university. And I always had like this thought, like, oh, Jonathan, you're always felt like a bit outcast, a bit weird. So I see my brother in contrast. He's very well socialised, communicates very well, effective, confident speaker, good bloke. Obviously, it's my brother. So with that in mind, sort of, he how to put it. Is definitely a contrast between me and him. Same parents, all that sort of stuff. Same sort of upbringing, roughly. I mean, he did have a bit more help with a lot of things. The first child does typically have more help with things in terms of, as a child, because the parents then expect the eldest child to teach the younger child, who then teaches the younger child, who goes down the flow sort of thing. But the problem was, I was a different kind of personality type to my brother. So he's more extroverted, I'm more introverted. And I found a lot of the social side of things very tricky, as well as the sensory side of things. So if I went to nightclubs sometimes, it was a living hell. But I knew if I didn't go to those when I was in university, I didn't stand a chance. I stuck out like a sore thumb. So a lot of my interests and passions evolved around self-indulgence, sports, self-teaching, curriculum, things that you do on your own, painting, drawing. I was in lots of art classes, sports, weightlifting, whatever. And what I found was, no matter how hard I dug and dug and dug and dug to try and get better at the social aspect of things, I just couldn't get any better. So I was like, well, there's a bottleneck here. How do I get past it? So I went through all the tests to get autism. It's quite extensive, so it's not like you sit on the room for half an hour and you get, oh, you've got autism. No, it's very comprehensive in order to get a diagnosis, at least here in England. And the criteria has changed over the past few years, maybe decade. So now we have something called the DSM criteria, which I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's something like, I don't know, mental assessment, something, I don't know, whatever it is. And basically now we don't diagnose people with Asperger's, but we diagnose people with autism as an umbrella spectrum, as like I don't really like the word spectrum, but that's a talk for another day maybe. But we sort of found, I tick off the typical, I don't know, subjective and objective markers of autism nearly maximally. The only one I don't tick off is communication. So that's why I'm able to sit here on the stream and communicate with people like you. So what I did was I actually involved myself more socially as I got older, so I could learn more skills. So your set point, if you're a child and you're watching this, or you've got a child, isn't stuck. You're not stuck at this mute, can't talk, unsociable, anxious setting. That can vary. Some things are quite individual though, so I still suffer with sensory overload. If I'm stressed out, I get really hot. My body is not finely tuned to the environment I live with. It's I live in a very hostile and stressful situation. And what I've actually got here is, I mean, I'll give you an example. I've got a window in my room, and I've got my room's kind of that shape. You can kind of tell from the wall ceiling. And the window that I see with the light coming out of it is like that. You can't see much at all. You can't see much light. So for me, it's very distressing. So I actually have to do biohacks to get around that. So the right light exposure has been key for me. It's a big thing high up on the chain. The temperature thing, regulating. So I do a lot of anchoring. It's a form of meditation. So basically, you work out a number and a color, and you imagine that the number represents something, the color represents something. And sometimes I might put on some calming music, close my eyes, put the fan on, and I'll think of that color and that number, though. So there's two things which identify as a positive experience. Now that'll take me somewhere else. So it's a form of meditation effect. Now I also have the air conditioning on set at 16 degrees Celsius all day, every day, when I'm in the room. That's just because I get really, really hot. Part of that's because of the pain stuff, but part of it is because of distress. People that get stressed, they have autonomic dysfunction. So it's a lot of things to tackle here. Sometimes I can feel overwhelmed socially. So what I do is I sometimes will minimize my exposure. So it might be that I have a lock or something on my phone to say, all right, you've had 4 hours screen time now. Let's go for a walk or something. Or my smartwatch will do the same thing. So it'll say workout, but I'm not working out. It just means I'm not staring at my screen for 20 minutes or whatever. So then I'll go outside and I'll incorporate things into my day. So I've now got a more structured routine. So I know what does and doesn't work based on my experience and how I feel day to day. So I log a lot of what I do. Now that's in contrast to what you might be doing, DC. So with ADHD, that might be overwhelming. It might be too much. It might be hard to stick to a program. But for me, it gives me that checkbox: next thing, next thing, next thing. And I'm quite an analytical person, so it just matches what I'm trying to achieve in life. But that's been largely my experience and like a general summative example of what I found effective alongside the carnivore diet. So, I mean, I don't know what specifically you want to go into in this kind of chat today, but it's completely up to you.
No, that's great. I mean, we'll talk about all of that, and we'll sort of expand on a lot of the things too. We'll expand on the hacks because, I mean, there's so many things that like you just were talking about there. Like you're talking about autonomic dysfunction and some of the biohacks you do to cope with the stress and things like that. Like one thing that I found was interesting though with you is that your ability to focus is like completely opposite to ADHD. You know, like there's so, I mean, it's not, none of these conditions make us like, you know, dumb or anything like that. It's just that we just have a different way of thinking and then looking at things. Like you have ADHD, you have autism, and you have like other people who have like a neurotypical brain, and they structure they have the ability to structure things. Like I think you do too. Like you can structure things very well. Whereas ADHD, it's kind of like you know, like untangling Christmas tree lights, you know. And it's like it's just all on it. At the end, like some days you get overwhelmed and you just screw it and just plug the whole ball in and just leave it, you know. I just let it go. But it's there are a number of things that I think are really effective. There's some things that you just can't do, you know, like with ADHD, for example, making one plan and sticking to that doesn't work. Like, you know, when people say, okay, if you make a plan and you make a schedule, that'll help sort of keep you on track, sort of thing. And yeah, we do like that. Like ADHD typically like new things all the time. So new information, new ways of doing things, and so if you make a plan and you start sticking to that, it might work for a week or two, or even, you know, a month or two. But then after a while, it sort of gets bored, and you have to reschedule, you have to restructure everything. So it's something you really have to stay on top of, you know. I think that, I mean, there's a number of different problems that come with this. Like with ADHD, for example, making it, like I like to talk about making habits, you know. But like I said, it's great for a neurotypical brain, for example, to have and like you obviously have structure, and you've got your plan in place, and you just do that day after day, sort of thing. But and I do like talking about making habits because I think it's a great way to get yourself to a point where you don't need to think about it so much. You just go and do it, you know. But when you have ADHD, you tend to analyze it too much, and you think, well, is this really what I like? You have a structure, and you say, okay, these are great habits. This is what I want to do. And then you do it for a week, and you feel great. You feel wonderful. It's working well. Then a couple of weeks later, you think, well, is this really what I want to do? Sort of thing. You start analyzing everything like this is, yeah. And then you have to try and find new ways to try and make it more interesting. You're sort of looking for that new dopamine hit, you know.
That's it. Yeah, I have to admit there is. This isn't a talk about pain, obviously, but with my sort of pain disorder, I've looked at lots of biochemical pathways and how they affect the brain. So I've looked at like different supplements, so GABAergic, dopaminergic, serotonin, you know, adrenaline, all these different hormones that neurotransmitters that we have, sort of thing. And I've worked out, okay, if I try and nail this supplement and use this, what impact does it have? And what I think is there's a strong, I'd say, not chemical imbalance, but certain disposition are phenotypes or personality types or autism, ADHD types have, which are impacted by certain biochemical pathways. So for you, it might be you need that dopaminergic pathway. So for you, your reward system needs to be that, 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 that. Whereas mine is, I have a long flow chart to get an eventual, peak. I'm happy with the peak, but I don't need the smaller stuff. But then, it's hard to say. We sort of all biochemically a bit different, but I'd personally be looking at that sort of thing. I'm kind of curious if you've tried any supplements in relation to ADHD or medicines or anything which you found effective.
I try to avoid that sort of stuff at the moment. But I think there's that's something I'm really interested in too, is like different chemical pathways in the brain to try and help it and to try and make progress, especially since like 3 years of chemotherapy did a lot of damage as well, so, and it actually made the ADHD a lot worse. And actually at the time afterwards, I was pretty much a dementia patient. I couldn't even remember what having breakfast sort of thing, so to make the progress that where I've gotten to now, it's been a life changer. But you still have these baseline problems, and like when, for example, my wife, she's a typical neurotypical brain, and she's very analytical, and she's very she'll, when there's a job to do, a neurotypical brain is kind of motivated by that job, and they'll get it done as soon as they can, and then they'll have that, if they have spare time afterwards to have a rest sort of thing, they will. Whereas an ADHD brain, if for example I've got like an hour before my wife gets home and to do the dishes sort of thing, I'll wait till the last 2 minutes. I just won't do it until then. And then of course, it's not done when she gets home, so that sort of thing. You can't really plan a time schedule with ADHD. You pretty much have what's called time blindness, and you don't really. I find it very difficult to plan any kind of job to a time as well, because it's because of this time blindness. You sort of think, well, every job is like a 10-minute job, but when it takes longer than that, it sort of gets a bit overwhelming. You think, well, you get frustrated, and it's taken longer than it should, sort of thing. So in that respect, I've found that rather than planning jobs by time, that my goal setting becomes just plan the outcome, like what I want at the end of that, rather than say, for example, instead of saying, okay, today I want to read for 1 hour, I say, okay, I want to read at least 10 pages. So I want that end result, not a time period at all. So I think it's that's something that works better for me, because otherwise I just lose all sense of time. And especially if I do a lot of writing and other things like that. If I turn on the computer and I say, well, I've got an hour to do this writing, I want to get this sort of writing, this amount of writing done, then I'll spend the first half hour, start looking at social media, get distracted very easily, So I have to say, look, I want to do, okay, so I want to write down 10 pages today, and that's it. No matter what. And it doesn't worry me then after that. If that's my goal, it doesn't worry me if it takes 30 minutes or if it takes the whole day. That's as long as I get that 10 pages done, So it's it's weird. Like, I know it's kind of weird but my wife thinks it's weird. It's a bit of a strange way to think, and she gets very frustrated with me, because to her, like a neurotypical, it's like, oh, just do it and get it done, and it's all good, So I don't know. She's just really well organized. Where for me, everything's kind of more chaotic, But I think that, a lot of it comes down to, growing up on the standard Western diet and low carb, high carb, sort of low fat diets, I think that the brain is, you get a lot of that brain fog and everything like that, but it's which does improve on the carnivore diet, obviously. But I think through those developing years, I think that makes a big difference. It's a lifetime of things that you just can't get back when you're an adult. So
I'd agree. Yeah, it's a lot of it's like you said about the diet, like the gut microbiome. I mean, what we do know is that what we initially have, even in the first few hours or days of our life as babies, that influences our health for the rest of our lives. So in Russia, for example, they have, I think you may have known this already, but when they have a baby, they're on a ward. They got the different bays and things, and they'll actually pass each other's babies round, so they get different bacteria. So they actually almost baby swap. And if you think that's how we used to do it ancestrally in tribes, like we wouldn't just have one mum after 20 kids. They'd have all the mums in their own tent, hut, whatever it was, and they'd all have screaming babies, and the men went out to hunt, whatever, and they'd be helping each other out. And we have this like hygiene thing at the moment, like, and there's actually a study that came out recently, which I can't cite it because I can't remember the citation, but they're talking about how people are hygienic for the sake of comfort, but not for the sake of hygiene. So the idea that we, wash daily, have a warm shower, or whatever, that's for comfort. People aren't doing that to stay clean. The majority of people, when they're ticking the boxes to see why they do it, is, because it makes me feel good, because I feel refreshed. Very little percentage of the time, it's actually because of cleanliness. But even then, I've been in very sterile environments in the past, and I only get ill in sterile environments. What does that say?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's like the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and it used to be very, very social. Oh, he's gone again. He'll be back in a minute. But yeah, it takes a village to raise a child. Back in the ancestral sort of way of doing things. I think that does have a big difference too, and I think that obviously the diet has an effect on the way we develop as we grow. So I think the standard Western diet, I think there probably wasn't. I don't think that there was. I don't like it is. I know there's a lot of these new conditions, and we're talking about cancer and heart attack, heart disease, everything else. But I think even conditions like ADHD and autism, they just didn't really exist a couple of 100 years ago, and even before then. So I think that growing up in this environment, it really does have an impact as well. So you're right, mate. But you can see you, but you're a little bit distorted.
Just adjusting things.
Okay, what you're seeing now, ladies and gentlemen, is a view of what the world looks like for Jonathan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, mate.
I can't hear you. Oh, no.
You can't hear me? Technical issues. All right, he'll be back. But when you're talking about ADHD, I think managing it as an adult, it does present its challenges, but I think it is manageable. And I think, for ADHD brains, I think there's like a good saying. There's 4 C's actually that I like to abide by. Like the 4 C's for managing ADHD. One is captivate. Okay, so you're kind of looking for that dopamine hit. There's something. You're always looking for that new thing to try and motivate yourself, and to sort of try and stay passionate about what you're doing, and create. C number 2. Compete. ADHD people are usually quite competitive, and I've always been quite competitive when it comes to sports and things that I enjoy doing. And complete, like the end result, not so much setting a time for a schedule or it's just the end result itself. I think ADHD people really need a quick win. So this is where I tell people, celebrate your small victories as well, because that, I mean, if you have small steps along the way, that really helps you to celebrate your small victories. Like, and it gives you, sometimes I know, like when you break down a big job, it can be a little bit overwhelming. It looks like a mountain in front of you, you know. And so, you know, when you break it down into each small steps, that I find is more motivating, because I can do, okay, I've got to this point, now it's the next step, and then it's the next step, you know. So I can celebrate that quick win that, you know, sort of helps with my ADHD, managing that problem, you know.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Do you feel restless a lot? Yes, I do. I do feel restless a lot. You probably notice, like when I do these lives, like I move around a bit, you know. I'm always moving, always. Like I'm tapping my feet or my leg, or, you know, it drives my wife nuts. You know, like I'm just sitting next to her, and I'll be like tapping my foot, sort of thing, you know. Yeah, that's ADHD. It's like I can't sit and watch a movie without getting up and doing something, and I just need something to, you know, to take my interest a bit, you know. So yeah, it's quite strong with me. It's, I mean, like with autism, you have different spectrums, I guess, but it's yeah. I still think it's manageable. I think it's like when I was saying with the 4 C's, you know, like captivate, create. I think ADHD people are usually quite creative, and they like to. I think they need flexibility as well. So it's really difficult for someone with ADHD to have like an office job where you have like set hours, and you have deadlines, and, you know, you have to have, you know, certain jobs done at a certain time, sort of thing. That's kind of difficult for ADHD brain, and they tend to, you know, sort of be in and out of work and that sort of thing because of that reason. So I think they need more flexibility, and like working for themselves is usually a pretty good way for ADHD people to go. But something creative, something they can express themselves, I think is more ADHD sort of way of thinking as well. And we tend to procrastinate a lot. Like, I know, like you, Jonathan, you are, because you're very much like schedule orientated rather than so much goal orientated. Like, I will look at a job, and for some reason, like sometimes it'll get a little bit overwhelming, like where to start, where do I start with this sort of thing? And before you know it, like hours have gone by, and I haven't even started. It's not that I'm lazy or that I don't want to do it. It's just that I spend too much time overthinking it, and not just, and like, oh, I'll look at it, like sometimes it might take days for me to start something that'll only take 10 minutes to do, you know, because I'm just, I don't know, bugger it, you know, it'll just can't work out exactly the way I want it, sort of thing, you know. So I think ADHD is, they have a real problem with procrastination, you know.
Yeah.
But
Can you
there's
hear me all right?
a couple of things. Yeah, there's a couple of things that I like to do to help with that, though, too, with the procrastination. One, like, for example, if it's a 2-minute job, do it now. That's what I like to do. There's a few things that do stick with me that I don't change, because fortunately, like with that in mind, like if it's a 2-minute job, like taking out the trash, for example, I do it now because otherwise I'll just forget about it. Once I get distracted, I just won't think about it. Like, sometimes I'll make myself a drink, and then I'll come and sit down, and then I'll totally forget about it. And like an hour later, the drink's still sitting on the bench, you know, because it just got distracted and forgot all about it. So it's a little bit crazy like that. So when it comes to jobs, there's a few things I like to do to try and manage this, and that's one, if it's a 2-minute job, do it now. Don't waste time. Don't think about it. Just do it. And I also carry notepads. Like I always write down, make sure that like if someone tells me to do something, or someone tells me something, or if I think of something, I write it down so that I can come back to it later, because otherwise I'll just completely forget about it. So that's something that's not on a schedule. It's not something I'm gonna forget about or get bored with. So it's any time of the day. And other times, like I've said before, I do like to plan a few things before the day before, because like at night, I'll try to write down 3 things that I want to do the next day, because otherwise I just won't do it. But there's they're saying like, what is his name? I forget the writer actually is Samuel Clemens was his name actually. But anyway, eat the frog. If your job was to eat a frog, do it first thing in the morning. If your job was to eat 2 frogs, eat the biggest one first. So basically to get the biggest job out of the way first. So that's what I like to do. Like I write down things that I have to do the next day, things that I have no choice. I have to get these things done. So I write them down the night before, and then anything after that is just bonus. Yeah. So that's what I do.
I have the same kind of thing. Like I've got non-negotiables, so I highlight color my chart on my calendar each week. What you'll find is, say it's Friday, and you look at my next week. I've got maybe 30 hours of things to do. By Sunday, I've got about 50 hours of things to do. They're the additionals. So I've got a baseline kind of thing. So like my coaching stuff might be yellow. So these are things which earn me money, which I must do, where I'm responsible, accountable for someone else's stuff. With someone else, like this sort of thing will be yellow. There's this guy's from Australia is taking the time to chat with me about something. Or if I've got a client consult, these are things which I have to do. Now, anything extra might be walk to the shops to get on a packet of chewing gum or something. I'll schedule that sort of thing in from time to time. So I do effectively the same sort of thing, but I do see a lot of people nowadays with ADHD just around me. My mum, for example, I'm absolutely certain she has it. She's not diagnosed or anything, but she's had, within the last, I want to say 3 years, perhaps done about 7 different jobs. And in saying that, they've all been very varied sort of things, but I think she had the best success doing things where she, like you said, she's worked from home. So her stuff is she's like a beauty technician basically, does like laser hair removal, tattoo removal, all that sort of stuff. She actually quite enjoys it because she has, well, I've got a client this day and that day, so it's quite spread out. There's nothing too overwhelming or too routine, and she works as much or as little as she wants. Whereas for me, I need that structure. I need to have something to do every day. So it might be I need to add to a new ebook and write something out, or script something, or create a video, or write out a coaching plan. I have to have something, the next thing to look forward to, because it depends what kind of lifestyle you live. But I need that next thing. But in saying that, it's not like I don't get anxious about it like I used to when I was younger. One of the tools I actually use is ChatGPT for a lot of the social stuff. So, for example, I've had some very strange social situations recently where I was actually excluded from a group by the guy that ran it on Instagram. And basically this group was to like collaborate amongst influencers or people with somewhat decent, followings, to share each other's stuff, basically. I noticed I shared or commented on about 40 different things. I asked people to share 2 of my things, and basically no one did it. And I'm like, these 2 things that I'm asking you to share here are actually very important to me. They're significant things. They're not just reels. Oh, carnivore diet is great. Now, these are much more impactful things which would have impacted more people had they shared it. And I sort of pulled him out on it, just very politely said, "Oh, I'm not sure what to say here. You know, I'm struggling to understand why people haven't really shared this. Please, could you share it?" Whatever it was. And I was told that I was needy, and it is overwhelming, and that the group didn't appreciate it. Meanwhile, about 5 or 6 people within that group were all on my side. Now, I sort of had conversations with these different people to sort of say, you're still part of that group, you're associated with that group, which is, I find it unethical and immoral personally. Like, for example, if for example, UDC had, say you've got ADHD, whatever, fine. And you said, "Oh, I want you to share this video about ADHD. It's very important to me. It's very sentimental, and it mean a lot to me if you did it," sort of thing. Then you got kicked out of the group because you got told that you're too demanding. I wouldn't associate with people. So I've actually now, in a sense, lost a friend because of it, and because they didn't want to disassociate with that group. And they sort of run this spiel or excuse about how they couldn't, how to put it, how they had friends in the group, they didn't want to leave because they had friends in the group. I'm like, well, no, you could have actually left that group and still collaborated with these people that you are friends with and still be friends with them. And there'd be no water off their back, but it's water off my back. You know, I'm the one that suffered because of it. No, these people were disableist, rude, condescending, arrogant. And basically, the group leader, his name's the hunter-gatherer mindset. So I am putting him on blast here because I don't like the bloke. I think he's an Irishman, and he's disableist, nasty, spiteful, and he backtracked, which is what I don't like. So he's trying to make out like I was the problem when it was him that was the problem. Now this guy had a massive ego, and I ran every single conversation between me and him, everything through ChatGPT, and they said my reaction to every single thing that he said was perfect, bang on, exactly what is socially normal and acceptable. And he sort of tried to detract from that and say, "Oh, wish you well, man," and all this sort of stuff in the Irish accent, whatever. And I was like, "No, you're being false here. You're disableist. You discriminated against me, and I'm not having it. I do not accept it." So I told him straight, left the group, and fortunately, one of my other friends, Mark Ennis, actually nice bloke, good friend of mine, he actually stood up for me, and I was quite touched by that, and it meant a lot to me because someone actually said something. So although Mark is still in the group, he still stood up for me and still said something because he knew what they did was wrong. So for me, in that weird, very convoluted story, so ChatGPT has been very effective for me. So as someone with autism, I have to script most of my conversations. People say, "Isn't that weird?" I'm like, yeah, it is weird, but it reduces the social overwhelmment, social pressure that I have to deal with things. So what people watching this might not know now is everything that's in the conversation I've already just said, apart from obviously responding to anything DC's asked me or said to me, has already been scripted in my head. I've already executed it. I just need to say it. In that instance, technology has been really helpful to me now. So if you've got autism and you find a way to use ChatGPT to your advantage, then do it. And there's nothing wrong with it because all I'm doing now is leveling a playing field. And what I'm actually seeing now is I'm actually more traffic on my website for my coaching and stuff like that because of it, because I'm actually able to deal with that bottleneck in socializing that I had before by using technology to my advantage. So, you know, that's a little hack, but I don't affect it that much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, like talking, I mean, ADHD people usually have a problem with conversation as well. Not so much because of like being introverted or interaction sort of thing. It's like just keeping track, you know, and we tend to go off on tangents, you know. So, you know, I think it's a useful tool if you can run, like you say, like scripts and things like that. If you can run that through, you know, an AI generated things like ChatGPT or Grok or anything like that, anything that's going to help, I think it's really beneficial, you know, and that's what it's for, really. It's to help, you know, sort of fill gaps. So it can be a useful tool, very useful. But, you know, like let's talk about, I mean, like you're talking about the chemical pathways in the brain there. I think that is in itself, like the carnivore diet obviously helps a lot, because when you talk about sugar and you're talking about other foods, carbohydrates, things like that, they cause brain fog and lead to other sort of conditions. If you long term sort of thing. The difference, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, for you, you've been doing this a long time as well for a reason, but I know for me, I mean, it's not just the ADHD, but the recovery from chemotherapy and stuff like that. The proper diet has made like a world of difference. Like beforehand, I wouldn't like I didn't know I was ADHD until just a couple of years ago. So like my whole life I was ADHD. I didn't even know. I didn't even think about that sort of stuff. That's the brain fog sort of diet. So it's given me, like, being on the carnivore diet. It's helped remove a lot, like helped a lot of recovery. Obviously, even being able to speak. But with ADHD and removing that brain fog a lot, so that I got to the point where I knew I had a problem, and I went and got checked, and everything's so that's where I'm at now. But because I know I have the problem, I was able then to find ways to manage it. Whereas before I just didn't know I had the problem, so I didn't even bother looking for the solution. So it makes a very big difference. So I look at things like, it's not, I mean, diet, obviously, carnivore diet. You know what fats do to the brain is because the brain's built that way. Compared to sugars, carbohydrates, and what that does to you. But also breath work. Like the hacks that I use. Yeah, like the hacks that I talk about, the 8 lifestyle hacks, a lot of that really affects the way you think. Even posture, people don't really think about. But posture, if you are slouched all the time, for example, if your head forward and that sort of thing, you're compressing your diaphragm, and like 80% of the air that you breathe in comes from the mouth, like the movement of your diaphragm. So if you are slouched over, you're not breathing properly, and if your mouth breathing, for example, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system, which means that you're not thinking properly, you're also not getting oxygen to your cells, because you have an imbalance of CO2 and oxygen. And I'm not saying CO2 is bad. I'm just saying that there's an imbalance there. You need CO2 because that actually delivers the oxygen to your cells in your blood and things like that. So, but you need the balance. And when for example, if you're not breathing properly, if you're activating the sympathetic nervous system a lot, that engages cortisol. So you're producing cortisol all day, sort of, if you're not breathing properly. So there's a number of things that I think that I found that really plays an effect. It's not just the food. Obviously, I think that's a major effect, especially when developing children. But as an adult, breath work and diet are the two main culprits. But like you said too, your hacks that help you as well. Like, I find grounding helps, being out in the sun helps, because it's all about hormones and things like that. It all affects the way you think.
Yeah, I've got a little gadget here actually. I just want to highlight it because you're talking about breath work. So the brand's called, I don't know, God, Omhale. What it is, we got sent this actually a couple of weeks back, and what it is, you got basically a mouthpiece. So it is effectively a gadget to help you. You just put it around your mouth like this.
Yeah.
Then there's like a button thing. So that button will emit like a voice. So you can have like different programs. So you can like breathe in 4 seconds, out 4 seconds, all this sort of stuff. They've got separate little gadget thing here. So different kind of things to put your mouth around. Sounds a bit peculiar. And it's got like a nose blocker thing. And I've been using this now for a little while, and I found it quite effective. So I track like heart rate and things like that, resting heart rate, all that sort of stuff. And I do find when I use it, my heart rate does go down a bit. Now, if my heart rate was elevated, I'm not in that parasympathetic state, which I ideally want to be in most of the time. Because if you're too hyped up all the time, your body's not going to recover well. Just your body's using more vitamins, minerals, depletes faster, all that sort of stuff you've mentioned in other videos. So I've been using this as a little biohack, and I'm not saying people have to get this one, but I think I paid I didn't pay anything for it, but I think it goes to about like 30 quid or something. So if you need something to use to buy to give you that impetus to actually do the breath work, then it's quite helpful. The same with the light stuff. I mean, I can't always go outside. It's not always sunny here, so I'll use my red light gadgets and things like that. So all these biohacks are ways to bridge gaps which we might not be able to bridge ourselves as easily. So those sort of things are quite helpful. But like you said, it's all individual. Someone might try that breath work thing and find it doesn't do much. But, I kind of wanted to ask you. I mean, we're probably on the same page for a lot of this stuff, but if you had to put maybe the top 3 things someone can do with autism and or ADHD, what would they be? So, just to highlight, like, I don't know, like diet, exercise, social stuff, breath work, blue light, grounding. Like, if you'd have like a hierarchy, what's the first? That big rock you said at the start. What's the first pillar you should be looking at?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you should be doing is diet. Because that affects the way you think. More, like on the biggest scale. I mean, what animal fats. I mean, have a look at what Georgia eat. Right, it's about what fats do for your brain, things like that. So I think diet should be the first thing. So that's why I like carnivore diet is second to none. Obviously, it's our proper diet, and it's made a world of difference for me. Next, I think like the rest after that, I would have to say breath work or breath awareness. I should say breath awareness should be the second one, because the way you breathe really affects all the other processes in your body as well. It affects your brain, all your hormone function. So like posture is part of that. Posture and breath awareness, I think, should be number 2. And I mean, there's 8 in total that I abide by, but third one I would say it'd have to be light, like sunlight, natural light. So that would be my top 3 anyway. Definitely like diet, carnivore diet, optimally, high fat, breath work or breath awareness. Okay, so you are aware of the way you breathe. So and mostly like through the day, most people should be diaphragmatic breathing through the diaphragm. Okay, so like expanding the lungs or expanding the diaphragm at 360 degrees. It's not your lungs do very little of the work. It's like kind of the diaphragm works like a vacuum cleaner engine, like it sucks the air into the lungs, So the engine behind the bag, like in the vacuum cleaner, and it sucks the air into the bag, right? And that's how your diaphragm works. So and it should expand, like kind of feels more like belly breathing. So you expand your belly and the lower ribs when you breathe in, and it in a 360-degree angle, like everywhere, like just like that. It's not about lungs in ribs in and out sort of thing, or belly in and out sort of thing. It's a lot. So and breathing through the nose. A lot of people, most people, 99% of people these days breathe through the mouth. So that being consciously aware of the way you breathe makes a very big difference to the way you think and the way you feel. Okay. And of course, natural light is another thing too, because it's, the process of, light, and, for hormones, D3, testosterone, mobilizing and things like that. So I would put exercise or just general movement would be number 4. So yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I have to largely agree but I'm going to say my experience is a little bit different. Not because I don't value breathwork as number 2, but just because as I'm sort of adapting over time and finding different how things fit into my life kind of thing and what I spend my time doing. Some of the things that I do in terms of biohacks, lifestyle stuff are how to put it, like an amalgamation of several things. So for me, it's probably I'm going to change this every time I say it. So apologies if I sound a bit like all over the place. The diet's going to be the number 1 personally. The next one's going to be the gym or exercise movement, just because it helps me with my body. So if I get stiff, I'm in too much pain. If I'm in too much pain, the rest of the stuff's out the window. If I'm at the gym, I can socialize a bit before and after with friends there, so that's quite nice. So that kind of ticks quite a few boxes for me personally. But I would say, like at a fundamental level, you stick, Jonathan Griffiths, Carnivore muscle, or any autistic person on a desert island. What do they need? They're going to need good food. They're going to need breath work, because you're going to have to keep your body calm if you're in a state where you're isolated. So it's fundamental. What they say: food, diet, air, water. That's the fundamental things we do require. So if you look at that level from a base, it's going to be the base of the pyramid. But for me, because the base of the pyramid is a bit disjointed at the moment, I'm looking at things from a different lens. But I'd say the same as well about the social stuff and the other points you mentioned. The other stuff I think's more down the line, which is a bit more nuanced and a bit individual, is more like the things like maybe what was it? Cold exposure. I don't think as a human being with autism or ADHD, it's an absolute requirement high up on the list to do cold exposure. I'd probably put that somewhere like number 10 if I was to look at all the things that talk about the carnivore space. So it's not high up. So what I'm hoping for people like yourself is that, because I know you're taking a deep dive and you've got a really strong understanding of breath work. I hope that people like you speak up more about these things which are absolutely imperative, because I know you're looking to do maybe some coaching in the future or currently. And that's going to be a valuable tool to use and talk about in this space, because, everyone out there, probably watching this video, okay, they do the carnivore diet, great. Maybe they do a bit of sunlight exposure throughout the day, get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee out in the sun, walk the dog, great. But if you're not breathing right, forget about it. You're not optimizing. You're missing out a key thing here. So I definitely value what you're saying here. I'm not poo-pooing on it. It's just on my list, it's not number 2, personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, like even just breath awareness, like it's something you can do while you're at the gym. If you just make sure that you are breathing through the nose in and out, and on your way there and for the rest of the day, that in itself is all you need to do. But there are things there's just so many things that you can do, like like you're talking about before, the autonomic dysfunction. The way to control the autonomic nervous system is through breath work. Is different methods of breath work. Like another video I made recently was talking about improving things like nitric oxide, which can help with, like just breath work alone can improve your nitric oxide by 15 times, but of course on the proper human on carnivore diet, you've got foods rich in arginine, which the body converts into nitric oxide. So, you can really make a big improvement. And that, I mean, nitric oxide in the body is imperative for the way you think, the way you feel. It acts like a hormone. It's a miracle sort of molecule, It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I'd encourage anyone listening to this right now, just while you're watching this right this second, literally sit there, just breathe in really deeply, time it, I don't know, 5-10 seconds. Well, it depends how big your lungs are, but maybe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out.
Well,
do that
exercise. Yeah, a good exercise, like especially if you're stressed, is what they call box breathing. Anyone can do that. The Navy SEALs use box breathing. It's like to calm themselves in high stress sort of situations. All right. And the reason why it's called box breathing is because it's just 4, 4, and 4 and 4. So like if you breathe in slowly through the nose, just over 4 seconds, count to 4, and breathe in through the nose, 4 seconds, then hold for 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then slowly breathe out for 4 seconds. Okay, 2, 3, 4, then hold for 4 seconds. So that you make a perfect square. All right, that's why it's called box breathing. So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds, and just do that repeatedly. That's why it's called box breathing. Okay, only through in and out through the nose. All right, and you'll find you instantly feel a lot calmer. Okay, after doing that, and especially if you got some stress going on, just breathe in, and then breathe out, and it's an amazing difference. Even just something as simple as that.
Yeah, helps your digestion as well. I know a lot of bodybuilders that are eating 6 meals a day, and I eat 4. And I actually make it a point. Doesn't matter where I'm at. If I'm at a restaurant or whatever, I like make a point. All right, I'm eating now. I'm calm, quiet. I'll actually almost block out the noise around me. So I'll even sort of try to find seating where it's quieter, away from like people that are shouting or whatever's going on, or like away from the noise of the kitchen area. When I make a point of it, I'm like, I don't care. Like we're eating in an unnatural setting. When natural setting is here, calmly and peaceful eating. So yeah, I think these things are valuable. And if you digest your food better, you're going to get up and feel more energetic for it. Your body's going to create enzymes effectively and all that stuff.
Well, when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, that's when your body, it actually starts to recover. That starts the recovery phase. So you calm down, especially if you're make sure you focus on breathing through the diaphragm, not the lungs. Okay. So expanding the diaphragm in your stomach. All right. Then your body instantly calms down. When it starts calming down, you've activated the parasympathetic nervous system, and then the body starts to recover. It starts digesting the food. It starts all the rebuilding process that it comes with. The recovery process after, like, you've been training whether you've been at the gym or at work, whether it's stress, like a mental stress, emotional stress, or physical stress. If you get into the parasympathetic nervous sort of state where you're relaxed, that's when recovery will start and will speed up. So these things are, I think, like breathwork is one of the biggest keys to, after diet, for relaxation, for recovery, for everything like that. Breathwork makes a huge difference, and I think this is why I'm getting into it now. I love the biochemistry that's involved in it and how the body reacts to breathwork, and this is something I'm going to add to my programs for strength and conditioning and things like that. So this is something I'll be adding to my coaching anyway. So yeah. I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
I actually do it after the gym. I mean, I don't have a rigid protocol, but it's something I am looking to implement, like tomorrow when I next go. So when I finish the gym, I'll sit down. They've got a sofa there, and I'll breathe in and out deeply, just calmly, for like 5-10 minutes. I might upload something on Instagram. I'm not really doing too much because I know, okay, I'm going to then go to the shop to buy some food or get on the bus. That's a stressful situation for me. Getting a bus is a living hell, if I'm honest. So when I'm sat at the bus stop, I'm actually then think, okay, I've got 20 minutes till the next bus. I might go to do a small food shop. Might then come back, and I allocate myself 5 minutes time just to calm down, wind down from the bright lights in the shop to then get on the bus. Should we answer some question? We've got a question. I'm going to quickly answer this one just because I don't want to leave people.
This question, does Jonathan find it hard to detect sarcasm?
I can do, but what I notice more often than not is people are inappropriately sarcastic. So you know how sometimes you go into a group of people and there's always one that just everything's a joke to them. So unless I can anticipate that they're a sarcastic kind of person, I'm going to struggle quite a bit. Fortunately, my auditory understanding is quite good, so you might notice that I'm better able to listen to people and interpret what they're doing if I'm actually looking away. So if I'm ever in a conversation with someone in person, they meet me and they notice that I'm looking away, it's not that I'm listening less, it's that I'm listening more because I'm focusing on what they're saying and how they're saying it, as opposed to looking at the stretch in front of me, which might be, bar cases, wave the arms and all this sort of stuff. I just find that being hell to deal with. So if anyone ever encounters me in person, they wonder, why should I not give me eye contact? It's not a sign of disrespect. It's a sign of I'm listening intently. I'm trying to work out what you're trying to say, just to eliminate that possibility of misunderstanding.
Yeah, fair enough. Can that cause red lips, hard to breathe? I'm not sure.
No, I've not experienced that. I think she means the gadget that I said.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, no issues personally using it. I've been using it.
Yeah. Cold exposure is very helpful for ADHD in my experience. Yeah, I think. I mean, with cold exposure, I think it's the anti-inflammatory sort of side of things. Like it brings inflammation down, which helps with ADHD, right? And carnivore diet does that as well. It brings inflammation down. So, like we're talking about before, I mean, carbs add, and seed oils and everything like that. The inflammation plus, the brain fog that you get from standard Western, like processed foods, especially, and seed oils and things like that. That makes a very big difference, So anything that actually reduces inflammation, I think, is really going to be very helpful for the way you think, whether it's ADHD or autism or anything else like that as well. So, yeah, I think it's one of those. It is a great thing to do. I think cold exposure. I do like doing different temperature exposures, but it's not on my top 3 list sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree though. Anything.
I've got a slightly nuanced opinion on that. I'm not saying here to people to not try it if they find it useful and effective in their day-to-day life. What I am saying though is that it is a stress to the body and it does in effect block inflammation. So if you're blocking inflammation that you require to heal, then it's not helpful. So in the instance of like bodybuilding purposes, you're never going to fully recover. Your joints are never going to be you're going to have the same integrity if you're always having cold exposure off the gym. So, but what we'll do is it'll reduce pain levels. And what actually happens is as you go through any kind of stress, you get a dip. Then when you come out of that stress, you get a dopaminergic exponential response. So, cold exposure, this is uncomfortable, this is bad. Okay. Then you get a rise out of it when you come out of that cold exposure because it's your brain responding to that signal saying, well, actually, I'm fine now. I was cold, but now I'm not. So now I feel great. But in my instance, personally, this could be different for everyone. So this isn't a general rule of thumb or anything, but in my experience, it's a bit of a negative because when I have that exponential rise in, positive association, so dopaminergic activity, serotonin maybe, I start to get some sort of nervous system dysfunction. So it makes me tired. So I'm better off keeping my body even keel rather than adding stress to it. But I can certainly see how it's effective for a lot of people because people do it. Obviously, it does work. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's not a new thing either. Like cold exposure has been used by professional athletes for a long time, but ice baths and things like that. But and like even before that, it was a traditional sort of thing. Same with even breath work. It was, if you go back, it goes back thousands of years, like shamanic breath work and things like that. So it's not a new thing. So people have been doing it for a very long time. So there's a reason for that.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, we all have. I mean, there's going to be certain people are going to have like different experiences with it as well. So Yeah, stresses can be a problem. Can you cure ASD with a combo of genetic modifications and drugs that rewire your brain?
Cure,
Well,
cure and rewire. 2 key words there.
Yeah. No idea, mate. No idea. I'm sure I'm sure there are things that you can take or do that might help sort of people to think differently. Whether that's a positive thing or not, that's I try to avoid that sort of stuff. But
Yeah. I would pass just a quick note. I'd look at some vitamins, some minerals, some amino acids. So amino acids, you might look at taurine, and tyrosine, and carnitine. I'm not going to explain the mechanisms of each one because it'll be here for hours, but look into those. The other ones, magnesium specifically, you're going to be looking at things like magnesium 3 and 8 specifically, across the blood-brain barrier, and that's very effective. Vitamin-wise, I'd look at vitamin B1. That has been used successfully for people with autism and related neurological disorders. Other than that, correcting methylation pathways as best you can. If you've got the MTHFR genetics, which basically mean that you don't methylate as well, you've got a high requirement for certain vitamins. A vitamin B2 riboflavin supplement might be helpful as well. Just be careful that all these things are part of a cascade. So by adding one, you could deplete another. So whilst they might give you an edge, these are supplements. They're not routine staples, if that makes sense. So you just got to be quite careful and do your own research.
Yeah. That's the problem when you supplement. You get too much of any one thing, and you're taking everything out of balance. So like try and get as much from your food as possible. That's why another good thing about the carnivore diet is that choline-rich foods are really good for your brain, because choline becomes acetylcholine A, which really helps to fire all the neurons in your brain, and it's like a brain food. Okay, so omega-3s as well, of course, but choline-rich foods like eggs, especially, muscle meat, seafood, things like scallops and oysters and things like that, also very rich in choline. So again, it comes down to try and get as much as you can from natural food, and it really works. It really helps a lot. What is this stem cell therapy? It's not therapy. These cereal products that I am showing up here on the screen. Okay. All right. So you have, I actually have here. So this is Stem Enhance Ultra. Okay. And what this does is this helps you it helps stimulate the body to release more healthy adult stem cells. Okay. Which again, helps the brain to think, things like that. Plasma flow. Okay, now plasma flow helps to sort of clear out dead cells, zombie cells that are sort of floating around your body and in your blood system and things like that, and clears the path for for your help get the adult stem cells around. And Cyactive is an anti-inflammatory sort of response thing as well. It sort of helps with absorption as well. So these products from Cereal are the only things that I use that. And I think that they've really helped me in the fact that they're not supplements, because I don't take supplements because I'm on the carnivore diet. I don't really need them, but they have certainly helped speed things up for me. They've helped speed up my recovery, from like chemotherapy and my cancer condition. But again, it's part of what I use also helps to manage the way I think. Okay, it's the carnivore diet. The top three things: the diet, breath work, and sunlight. And these things have really helped me a lot when it comes to managing my ADHD and my recovery in general from health conditions that left me pretty much bedridden for a very long time. So that's what the Cereal products are. and you can check out more. There's a lot of science, a lot of papers that are written on this. You can check it on the website there. You go to dcfit.surreal.com. Okay, they're a great product, and yeah, they're the only product actually that I actually take and will endorse, actually, because the only thing that I've found in the last 30 years actually do what they say they do. Like so many
I'm not.
other,
Yeah, I'm not personally affiliated just because I don't have time or energy to promote things. But I will say, if you're looking at this sort of thing, I do notice a lot of positive testimonies about it. I used it for about 3 months myself. No, it didn't fix me. So it's it's not fix all. So that's not what he's saying here. But he's saying if there's certain things your body would heal naturally, it will heal. It could potentially help heal them a bit faster. My hair was growing a bit faster when I used it. I'll say that much. So it's a bit like, well, I don't have any either, but
Yeah, well, like none of what we do is going to be like a miracle cure, but there are things that we can do to speed things along. Like for example, like the carnivore diet is not a miracle cure. It's not going to fix everything like overnight sort of thing. Everything takes time for your body to heal, but like for example, the more adult healthy stem cells you have floating around your body, then obviously the faster recovery and things like that's going to be, isn't it? And that, I mean, they go wherever the body needs them at that time. So I think it's a great product, unlike most of the other things I took in the past. So those I think we'll leave it there today, because Jonathan's he doesn't like to do these things for too long. But I think that's a good start. We're talking about, there are things that we can do. I mean, these are, they do present problems that are like challenges for us. ADHD is a challenge, and autism is a challenge, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible to live, or that it's impossible to manage either. There are things that you can do, and in some cases, I think, like for example, in some sort of like creative jobs, for example, I think ADHD can actually be an advantage over a neurotypical brain, for example. But I can talk about that in other times. And again, if you have a look at the hacks that we both talk about, the things that we do on a daily basis that help us manage these things, they will not only make you feel better, generally speaking, in health, but will also help you manage your lifestyle and manage your life a lot easier too, I think. Because again, the better you think, or the better you feel, okay, the better you'll think and process things, and just, I'm not saying it's going to make life all rainbows and unicorns, but it will certainly help.
Yeah, I encourage anyone that's listening to this to take stock of what you do have and the skill sets that you do have. I doubt there's anyone out there that doesn't have a unique skill that's watching this, or something they can actually lean into. And what you can measure, you can manage. So if, for example, you find like DC said earlier, like, oh, maybe an hour of reading each day doesn't work. Okay, fine. So he said, I'm going to commit myself to write or read 10 pages a day. Well, for me, it's okay. I can measure. Okay, I've got this many videos this month coming out. Okay, I'm actually ahead of schedule, so that means I can manage myself around that schedule. But I know the next month I'm gonna have to stay on top of it so I don't get behind. So it's that constant ticking over. That's what I think's quite important.
Yeah, that's right. And like I said too, like with ADHD, like there's a lot of these gurus out there say, like, you just got to make a plan, make a schedule, and all this sort of stuff. But that doesn't work when you get bored with it and you say, well, I'm not going to do it, or you just procrastinate or something like that. So make a schedule that works for you, and something you get excited about, and then you're going to have to change it up as well. Like, you can mix match things around, and that's what I like to do. I like to, like, for example, I don't like doing the same gym program day in, day out at the gym. So I have like, say, 3 or 4 basic exercises that I have to incorporate, and then everything else around it, I like to try new things pretty much on a daily basis, because it keeps you motivated and it keeps you looking for that new thing, trying that new thing. And that's what ADHD is really, it's about that captivate sort of, remember the 4 C's. Okay. The first one is captivate, get that dopamine sort of reaction, So, yeah. So I know it's very easy I know it's also very easy for ADHD people to get depressed because they feel like they're not doing things, or they're procrastinating and things like that. It doesn't mean that you can't do these things, or that you can't have a successful life or anything like that. It just means that you need to manage it. That's all. Anyway,
don't get behind. Yeah, be proactive in your own success. If you're watching this, make an effort today. Like, start something up today.
Yeah, that's right. Be proactive in it. Like there's one thing I like to remind myself is to have a day that means something. Whether it means something to people around you or just to yourself. That have a day that means something to you. Okay, so which is why, like I was talking about before, I write down what I have to do, the things that I have to do the next day, because I want to make the day mean something, make it count. Right. So that I'll leave that with you guys, and yeah, hopefully we'll talk about this again soon. And yeah, because I do think it is an important thing, especially for most people with ADHD. It actually goes undiagnosed as well. So most, I mean, I was, it was only a couple of years ago, and I'm 52 now, that I realized that I had ADHD. So these are, most people do go undiagnosed, and they think there's something wrong with them, and there's not. It's just a different way of thinking. That's all. All right. So we'll leave it there, guys. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you got some useful tips out of that. And we will talk about this again some other time, hopefully soon. And who knows, I might even do some more videos on this as well. So, all right, guys, thank you.
Cheers, guys.